Okay, so we're diving into this VP debate, Governor Walz,
Yeah.
Senator Vance, trying to get past the quick sound bites and really see where they stand on the big issues. We're talking about that CBS News face-off, October 1st, right? Their first on going head-to-head. And CBS News polls have this race really tight, so every word matters.
Yeah, no doubt. And they jumped right into it, too. Middle East, Iran trying to hit Israel, U.S. troops already on the ground, Iran's nuclear program. That's a lot.
It's a powder keg, for sure. So right away, that question, preemptive strike on Iran, yes or no? Walz, he wouldn't give a straight answer, but he made sure to praise Vice President Harris's leadership, even brought up some of those, well, let's just say not so flattering things people close to Trump said about how he handles these situations.
Interesting tactic. Vance, though, he went a different way, talking about his own life, working class family, serving his country, way to connect with those everyday struggles, especially when he's saying, look, Biden and Harris, they're out of touch. Like unfreezing all that Iranian money. He said that's directly funding attacks on Israel.
And then you had that whole back and forth about the Iran nuclear deal. Walz, like you'd expect, saying Trump pulling out, that was a mistake, emboldened Iran. Vance shot back, saying, hey, it's been years, Harris hasn't fixed it. But here's the thing that caught my ear. Vance actually said, and I quote, diplomacy isn't a dirty word.
Which, you got to admit, you don't hear that every day from that side of the aisle.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, are some Republicans maybe, just maybe, realizing that always being the tough guy, it doesn't work in every situation?
Something to watch for sure. Okay, from global crisis to one here at home, Hurricane Helen. Devastation, and it really put climate change front and center. Even CBS News polls are showing young Republicans are worried about this, want action. So did Vance, did he change his tune at all?
He focused a lot on the immediate need for hurricane relief, which, makes sense. But on the climate itself, not a lot of concrete commitments. He acknowledged the concerns, sure, but then pivoted right to American energy independence. It's a theme he hit on a lot, connecting it back to the economy.
Walz, though, he was ready. Emphasized how real climate change is, talked up those Biden/Harris investments in clean energy. Remember that huge solar plant going up in Minnesota?
Yeah.
He made sure nobody forgot.
Right, and Vance came back with the whole, well, those solar panels are made in China, trying to make people question if clean energy is really so clean, thinking about where it's coming from. Walz argued that, look, overall energy production is up, but it does make you think about all the different angles to these issues.
Big contrast here, though. Vance, he said climate problem, but that's a long way from Trump's hoax stance. Not just disagreeing on policy, but maybe if they even believe the science, which for some voters, that's a really big deal.
For sure, and it shows the tightrope Vance is walking, right?
Yeah.
Trying to keep Trump voters happy, but also not turn off more moderate folks who want solutions, not just, slogans.
And speaking of tough topics, immigration. The border is a huge concern for voters, so everyone was watching how Vance would handle it, especially with his campaign's pretty strong stance on deportations. We're talking about using the military, potentially the biggest deportation effort ever.
And it's worth reminding folks what CBP is, right? Customs and Border Protection. That's who Vance was citing when he said they've lost track of something like 300,000 migrant kids.
Right.
Creates this image of chaos, vulnerability. Agree or disagree with his policies, that image sticks with you, especially if you're worried about border security.
Especially when he put the blame right on Harris. Said she reversed all of Trump's policies, ending deportations, making crossing the border not a crime anymore, and that's what caused this mess. He even called it opening the floodgates, which, come on, that's loaded language.
Oh, absolutely. And he tied it directly to family separations. Said it's already happening because of Biden and Harris. Even brought up that heartbreaking case, the little girl, 7 years old, drowned in the Rio Grande trying to cross with her family. His argument, these tragedies, they're a direct result of policies that make people take these dangerous risks.
Walz pushed back hard, though. Said Harris is the only one in this race who's actually gone after those transnational gangs, drug smugglers. Pointed to her record as Attorney General in California, said she's the one with real experience on this.
And he wants a bigger solution, not just enforcement. Brought up that bipartisan immigration bill that stalled in Congress, the one that even Border Patrol and the Chamber of Commerce could get behind. Subtle way of saying, look, this isn't just about being tough, it's about making things work, even if it means working with the other side, which, let's face it, doesn't happen much these days.
But then things got really heated with this whole CBP One app debate. That's the app that lets migrants apply for asylum, parole at the border. Vance went right at Harris, said she created it to basically wave people through, no questions asked. Called it the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand, which I gotta admit, that's a pretty good line.
Memorable, yeah. but not exactly accurate. The moderator even stepped in, pointed out that the app's based on a law from 1990, way before Harris was even in politics. So was Vance being, you know, misleading on purpose or just didn't know? It's hard to say.
Makes you think, though, right? This is a big deal. Millions are watching. You think they'd be extra careful about getting the facts straight? Leaves voters wondering who to trust. And in an election, that can be everything.
Absolutely. It's why we do what we do here, right? Go past those sound bites, dig into the details. Sometimes what's not said or what's said wrong, that's just as important as the polished speeches.
And speaking of important, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, the economy.
With both sides pushing their economic plans, this was always going to be a big one. Walz really leaned into Harris's bold forward plan, said it'll put more money in people's pockets, create jobs.
He talked about those tax credits for manufacturing, for housing, bigger child tax credit, more help for small businesses. Sounds good, but then of course the question is, how do you pay for it?
Right, and that's where the Wharton School analysis comes in. They're projecting a pretty hefty increase to the deficit if Harris's plan happens. Now, Walz said you can't put a price on investing in the future, but voters are definitely going to be thinking about that price tag as they listen to these proposals.
And that's a lot of money, right? Voters are going to be asking, where is it all coming from? Especially with Vance hitting hard on that projected deficit, using it to hammer the whole Biden/Harris economic record. He really painted this picture of families struggling, food costs, housing, everything more expensive. It's that classic line, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Makes people think about their own wallets.
Right. And he wanted to offer that alternative. Kept going back to Trump's economy, how take-home pay went up, inflation was low, basically saying, look at the numbers. Trump's policies put more money in your pocket. It's a powerful argument, especially for voters feeling the pinch right now.
But is it that simple? I mean, the economy, it's complicated. Can you really just pin it all on one president, one party?
That's what they're debating, right? And it's what we're trying to unpack here. But it went deeper than just the numbers, Vance tapped into this feeling a lot of people have, this idea that the experts, the ones making all these decisions, they're out of touch.
Right, like those ivory tower folks, making policies that sound good on paper but don't actually help anyone in the real world.
Exactly. He played on that a lot, used that common sense kind of argument, trying to draw a contrast, right? The Biden/Harris camp, he made them seem elitist.
And he brought up how often experts have been wrong in the past.
Oh, yeah, he went there. Talked about how for years everyone said sending jobs to China, outsourcing, it'll be good for everyone. The experts all agreed. And look how that turned out. Towns devastated, jobs gone. It's a powerful argument, especially for people who feel like the system's failed them.
So how do you counter that as Walz? That's a tough one to argue with, especially when people are feeling it in their wallets.
He tried to steer it towards fairness, which I think resonates with a lot of working-class voters. He brought up Trump not paying federal income taxes for years, even while he was president. Put that next to the average person who pays their taxes no matter what.
Classic strategy, trying to make your opponent seem out of touch, like they're playing by a different set of rules. Did it work, though?
Vance didn't really take the bait, kind of brushed it off as a distraction, said focusing on Trump's taxes misses the point, kept hammering that message. Trust your gut, not the experts, because they've been wrong before.
The moderators weren't done with Trump, though. They shifted gears a bit, started focusing on something different. The candidates themselves, their qualifications, and frankly, their trustworthiness. It's not just about policies, right? It's about who these people are.
Absolutely. They started with Walz, grilling him about that inconsistency in his story about being in China during Tiananmen Square.
Right. He'd said he was in Hong Kong during the protests, but that wasn't accurate.
Tough spot. He admitted he misspoke, blamed it on a simple mistake, used it as a chance to talk up his record, National Guard, teacher, trying to show he's dedicated to serving others, even if he's not perfect.
The old, I'm only human approach. But then it was Vance's turn.
And this is where it got interesting. Remember all those things Vance said about Trump a few years back? Not exactly complimentary.
Calling him unfit, comparing him to America's Hitler even. That's harsh.
That's putting it mildly. And now he had to address it.
So what'd he say? What's the explanation?
He said he regretted those words, that he was wrong, said he'd bought into this media narrative about Trump that he now believes was false, talked about seeing Trump in action, his accomplishments, and how that changed his mind.
Big change of heart. You buy it.
$1 million question, right. And the moderators, they weren't letting up, brought up those messages that came out, the ones from 2020 where he was still criticizing Trump's economic record.
Oof, yeah, that's got to sting a little.
Definitely raised questions about just how sincere this whole conversion was. Did he really change his mind, or is this just politics?
So how'd he handle it?
He doubled down, said that, yeah, maybe he disagreed with Trump on some things, especially back in that first term, but ultimately he came to believe that a second Trump term would be better for the country. He even said Congress, under Trump, could have done more.
Interesting. So even while he's defending Trump, he's also kind of saying he wasn't a perfect leader. That's a tough line to walk.
It is. Shows how complicated this all is. Trying to keep Trump voters happy, but also show more moderate voters he's not afraid to think for himself. Whether it works, we'll see.
And from one complicated issue to another, the debate went to reproductive rights. With Roe v. Wade overturned, you knew this was going to be tense.
For sure. Walz, he just signed that bill making Minnesota one of the least restrictive states on abortion, so he came out swinging. Talked about trusting women to make healthcare decisions with their doctors, not politicians.
And he was fired up about it. But then, I don't know, something kind of unexpected happened.
Yeah, it was almost like this little blip got lost in everything else. You're talking about when they both agreed on bringing back manufacturing to the U.S.
Right. I mean, it seems so obvious. Make stuff here, create jobs. Who's against that? But you know how it is, this political climate. Just agreeing on the problem feels like a win, let alone the solution.
It's a big deal. For decades, everything's been about globalization, free trade, let the market decide, all that. And yeah, there were some good things that came from it, but there were also some downsides. And those downsides, they hit certain places, certain industries really hard. They're the ones who felt left behind.
And now you've got Walz and Vance, totally different sides of the aisle, saying, nope, got to change course. That's not just tweaking a policy here or there. It's like a whole new way of thinking about the American economy in this globalized world.
Exactly. And it brings up so many questions. How would a second Trump term with Vance as VP actually handle this? Would it be that same America First thing, tariffs, trade wars, or with Harris and Walz, would they go a different way? Maybe more about incentives, tax breaks, putting money into infrastructure, job training, that kind of thing.
Two very different approaches. But the goal's the same, right? Bring those manufacturing jobs back. Makes you think, what would that even look like? Would things cost more if they were made here? Would it be, I don't know, more sustainable? Better for workers? Or would it just be a race to the bottom, whoever can make it cheapest?
These are the questions we should all be asking. Because it's not just some theory, right? It affects everyone. The jobs out there, how much things cost, even like global power dynamics, it's all connected.
So much to consider. So we've gone deep on this VP debate, heard a lot. But that last part, that's what I keep coming back to. They both agree, make it in America. But what does that actually mean? And who really benefits? Keep those questions in mind as we get closer to the election. Because how we answer them, that's going to shape things, not just for us, but for our kids and grandkids too.